we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is 10 a.m. I don't know the date, August 10th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We do have a quorum. Has everybody had a chance to look at the staff report? Would anybody like to make a motion to accept the staff report?
I'll make a motion to accept the staff reports.
A second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. And then I know minutes were long. We had a long meeting last month. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us through that. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes from the July 13th, 2022 meeting? No? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Kelly.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Perfect. Megan, were you going to go over these, or Eric? I wasn't sure as far as the ones we had from last month. It looked like everything was approved.
I can go over those,
Okay.
Madam Chair. In short, all 6 hearings that we had last month were approved. And just an update on the final plat, the liens have been resolved. We're
okay.
just waiting on the Mylar to get signatures and stuff. And then
Okay,
we'll start that 180-day clock with that. So everything's looking good and got followed up shortly after the commissioner meeting. So
Okay, good. Perfect.
Just,
Good to hear.
good update right there.
Yeah, no, that is good to hear. Yes. That was a concern of mine. So we will go ahead and we will move forward. We have 2 hearings today. Public hearing number 1 is LR Communications, John Mock, conditional use permit for a communication tower. Megan, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first hearing today is a conditional use permit for a wireless internet site located at 87 Ganslands Drive, just on the west side of where Ranch View Estates got put in a couple years ago. The property is owned by Lawrence and Judy Lauder, and the application is LR Communications. The current zone out there is agricultural, and due to it being inside the growth management area, we need to go through the conditional use process instead of just a normal construction permit. As you can see out there, we've got the point located on the map. It is going to be up just a little bit higher, pretty standard for any communications facility, better line of sight and everything. But LR Communications is proposing a 56-foot wireless internet site to help in their expansion of their network. They have acquired a lease for 40 acres of what Lawrence and Judy Lauder own out there. Again, this site is going to be extremely similar looking to the existing man-face site and also the site that we approved last month just south of the city of Green River city limits. Again, the site's going to be run off of on-site solar powers only. No other utilities are predicted to be out there. And the proposed site will cover roughly 15 feet by 20 feet of ground space. And as a reminder, telecommunication sites are also always regulated by the FCC for all emissions. Here are the 2 site plans that were submitted. It's well within setbacks, property lines and everything. It's a rather large piece of land that the Lauders own out there. And again, this is the existing man-face site that everything is being modeled afterwards as they are going forth and expanding their networks. Jim went out and posted public notice and took pictures. And we'll just jump right into the conditional use review criteria. The requests consist with all applicable provisions of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan states encouraging growth and development to continue in orderly manner in its locations that contribute to the economic and social well-being of all county residents. Criteria number 2, the request shall not have any adverse effects on adjacent properties, and staff does not foresee this happening. Criteria number 3, the request is compatible with the existing or allowable uses of adjacent properties. As I stated before, this site is in a location that is just a little bit higher than the surrounding properties, so it's looking over everything in the area. Also, with it being located inside the growth management area is the reason why we're here today, and it's not just being approved with a construction permit as would be required if they were outside the growth management area. Criteria number 4, the request can demonstrate adequate facilities. We've been assured that facility will be solar power only, and due to this being an unmanned communications facility, it is exempt from access road standards per our Sweetwater County zoning regulations, section 4C, 5C. Criteria number 5, the request can demonstrate adequate provisions for maintenance and of the use and associated structures. The site's rather large or rather small in comparison to the leased area, even well within setbacks, and the footprint is relatively small. Staff does not foresee any concerns with the proposed site either. Criteria number 5, the request has been minimized to the greatest degree possible to We'll start that one over. The request has been minimized to the greatest degree possible adverse effects on the natural environment. The applicant is accomplishing this. It's only a 15 by 20 foot square foot area that they will be establishing the site on. And criteria number 7, the request will not create undue traffic congestion. As the site will be unmanned, there shouldn't be any increased traffic to the area other than the couple times a year where they go out and just make sure everything's working properly. And criteria number 8, the request does not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare. Staff does not foresee that the request will adversely affect any of these 3 items. RF emissions are and always will be regulated by the FCC. Again, most of the regulations that telecommunications people have to go through are going to be much greater than anything the county can require. So it's always caught up in other areas, which is good. And the last criteria is the request conforms to all applicable provisions of this resolution. Staff has reviewed the application and finds that the all required provisions of the Sweetwater County zoning resolution have been met. We, excuse me, did put this out for public and agency comment. The only comment that we got back was from Gene Legursky, the Sweetwater County Public Works Director. And he just made the request if they can just use the existing approach to access the facility out there. All should be good with that. And there was no concerns when speaking with the applicant on this. And staff recommends approval of the request. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Awesome, thank you. And it looks like we have somebody from LR Communications. Would you like to come up and let us know who you are, and is there anything you'd like to add?
I'm John Mock with LR Communications. If you have any questions for me, hit me with them. The one public comment we received was from, I believe, Gene Legursky, as you had stated. And that was our plan all along.
Okay, perfect. That was my only question is does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just primitive access beyond the graded road that's there.
Does anybody have on the board any other questions for him? No? Awesome. Thank you so much. At this time, we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. If there's anybody in the audience, in the public that would like to say something on behalf of the request. If there's anybody that is here that would like to say anything against. Anybody that would like to say anything in general. We will go ahead, close the public comment and open it back up to the board. If you have any other further questions for either Megan or Mr. Mock. No? All right. Hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion for public hearing 1 on the conditional use permit for LR Communications?
I make a motion that we approve the LR Communications conditional use permit communication tower.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Any final discussion? All those please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll move right into public hearing number 2, Brenda Baker with Pampered Paws Boarding. It is for a conditional use permit for kennels and pet boarding and grooming. Go for it, Megan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you stated, the property owner of 650 Summit Drive, just out north of Rock Springs, is Brenda Baker. She owns Pampered Paws Boarding and Grooming. The current zone of the property is mixed residential. Most of the properties to the east is mixed residential, and then properties to the west is R2SF. So it's has been an existing pet grooming, or excuse me, pet boarding facility for a number of years. One thing that she is proposing back in 2017 is when Brenda Baker took over Pampered Paws Boarding and Kennels. The land was owned by the Gundersons at that point in time, but she was in the process of buying the property and has since purchased the property. Since she has taken over, the land use staff has not received any complaints. That is always a very, very great sign, especially with operating any business, let alone having animals and things of that nature on site. And the applicant stated when she turned in her application for the conditional use permit, she stated, "I've made many of the following improvements to the buildings, grounds, and environments for the dogs who stay with us. I've torn out the fabric ceiling roof that was on the back door outdoor run and replaced it with a metal roof. I've replaced picket fencing around 3 sides and have replaced about 1/4 picket fence on the very last side. I've added vinyl fencing to the front of the large building to hopefully cancel some of the barking. Future plans also include making the kennels better at blocking any barking, and waste is removed daily to a large dumpster, and waste management empties it on a weekly basis." The reason Brenda is here today is actually a 2-part conditional use. And the first part is she is requesting an increase in hours of operation in which the pets would be allowed outside of their kennel each day. As you can see in your packet, when the pets are being dropped off by their owners, they are allowed outside of the kennel. And those hours, Monday through Saturday right now, are from 8 to 9 a.m. And then again in the afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then on Sunday, it's only from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So these are the times that people can come pick up or drop off their pets. And the dogs are allowed to be outside of their kennels at this time. What she is proposing to do is increase the hours of operation Monday through Sunday instead of just Monday through Saturday, as was previously granted. She's proposing from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. and then 3 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. So an hour and a half in the morning and an extra hour and a half in the afternoons or evenings. And then on Sundays, owners can only pick up and drop off between the hours of 3 and 6:30 p.m. The second part of this request is Brenda is also requesting to add on-site animal grooming. This is something that is not considered incidental use of the property because she has pet boarding out there. She is wanting to do a full-on grooming business out there. It's not just going to be for the pets that are staying with them. That can happen if owners would like it to happen, but she's also wanting to have a grooming business out there as well. Owners will drop off the pet to be groomed on site by the staff. Once the service is complete, the owners will return to pick up their pet. Owners are not encouraged to stay on site. Pets will only be allowed in the grooming salon, except if they need to relieve themselves on site in her backyard. And the proposed hours of operation for grooming, which she is requesting, is Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And here's the site plan. This property is rather large. It's about an acre. So you're not seeing the north side of the property, which has a barn and some open area. But this is just the side that's dealing with the kennel and the grooming portion. As you can see, there are 2 kennels out there. It is attached to her backyard where there's another additional dog run out there. When I went out and visited the site, trying to get out of the office a little bit more, I was pleasantly surprised out there. I've not spent a whole ton of time out north of Rock Springs, but when I got out there for it being a kennel, there was 0 dogs barking even when I entered the property. Not quite sure where I needed to park or anything like that. So pleasantly surprised, very well taken care of, nice and quiet. So things that we like to see. Another part of her request for the grooming is she is planning on reconverting the garage that's attached to her house right now into the grooming salon, but she's also wanting to bring in an additional shed and place it as close as possible, if not attach it to the building. She has applied for a construction permit, but that has not been issued and will be contingent upon this conditional use hearing. So I did want to make that clear. And she has spoken with Jim Zimmerman, our code enforcement specialist, and if this gets approved and the shed will be put on site, he will be out there to do inspections and make sure all fire requirements will be met with the shed being placed on the property. Jim also went out and posted the public notice and took pictures there. And we've got the normal same 9 criteria that we use for any conditional use permit, but there's also an additional 6 review criteria that is looked at as a whole because of the pet kenneling and pet boarding portion of that. As I've gone through the review of this, all those criteria have been met and have been met for a number of years and continue to be operating in a pleasant manner out there. So I will just stick with the main conditional use review criteria. Try to go over these in a little bit quicker fashion, highlighting the main points again. Since Brenda has taken over these kennels in August of 2017, there has been 0 complaints. That has been a huge improvement from the previous owners that were out there. She's made a number of improvements to keep the facilities clean, and not only clean and operable for the owners that are visiting the site, but is also providing a good environment for the pets that will be on site as well. It's in a location that is single family residential and mixed residential properties. The north area of Rock Springs is a pretty eclectic group of residents out there. I think it's a good area. And again, it's the site's been existing for many, many years. Staff has reviewed all the existing specific criteria that's mentioned in the zoning regulations and have found that the site does meet all required criteria as far as setback, fencing, sanitation requirements. All of those have been met and sustained for the entire time. The request does have adequate provisions for both requested uses. As I've stated before, there is a construction permit on file that is contingent upon approval of this conditional use hearing as well. And staff does not foresee any adverse effects on the natural environment. They're doing a very good job keeping all waste contained on site, and again, removing things weekly. There was no smell when I was out there. Very well maintained property. Staff does not anticipate any and added really traffic congestion at the time due to just the hours of operation. And when she's adding on-site grooming, there's only going to be a couple people there at a time, and it's more of a drop off, come back and pick up. So people aren't going to be waiting on the property. So there shouldn't be any undue traffic congestion there, nor have there been any issues with that in the past. And staff does not foresee any health, safety, or welfare issues, the kennel owners are required to adhere to stringent sanitary conditions and also may be inspected at any time in the future to assure compliance. Again, they're doing a really great job out there and we appreciate that. And last criteria is that the proposed uses conform with all Sweetwater County zoning regulation requirements. We did put this out for public agency and comments, and we did receive 2 comments back. The first was from the Sweetwater County Public Works Director, Gene Legursky, and he just made note that no modification to the existing approach onto Summit Drive will be allowed. Just clarification, they've never asked for any improvement or anything there, just making sure that nothing is going to be changing that way. It's been working in the past and we can see it continuing to work in the future. And then a neighbor, Angie Martinez, she submitted a comment form back and she said she doesn't have any problems with either of the things, the changes in hours of operation or adding grooming on site. She's good with everything. So that's also nice to see neighbors in the area supporting what's going on. And the land use staff recommends approval of the pet boarding and grooming with the following conditions. These are pretty much modeled after the first conditional use permit, updated to reflect the change in time that was requested for the pet boarding and kennel side of things, and also adding in the hours of operation for grooming. I'm not going to bore you with reading through all of those. You guys can see that there in your packet. And that's all I have. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Megan. I always hate to assume, I'm assuming you're Brenda. If you would like to come up and introduce yourself, and if there's anything you would like to add or share.
My name is Brenda Baker. I've owned Pampered Paws Boarding since September 1st of 2017. Like Megan has said, we've made a bunch of changes to the property and to the outside, trying to help with barking. We know dogs bark when they play, when they're stressed, whatever, but we've made with the outdoor kennels in the back, we have pretty much confined it in except for one side, and everything else is picket fence. So we do have a plan to add another not ceiling but roof on our outdoor social kennel, which is just off of the outdoor kennels that you see on the plans, just to one, for the dogs to have more shade, weather, anything like that, but to help with that barking also.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. We appreciate you keeping up on your property and truly, so that Jim's not out there and having nuisance complaints. So thank you. We do appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Brenda while she's up there? Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. If there's anybody in the audience that is for the conditional use permit, if you'd like to say anything. If there's anybody in the audience against the conditional use permit, or anybody in general that would like to speak on behalf. Hearing none, we'll close the public comment. We'll open it back up to the board. If anybody has any additional questions, comments, Kelly?
I got some questions for Megan. Are the hour setting, is that part of because they're a pet, a boarding house, or is that something that needs to even be there? Normal business hours or?
Business hours. I think it's also nice for the neighbors to know that the dogs aren't going to be outside all day, every day when they're getting dropped off by their owners. It's been something that, as far as I've looked back on even back when this first came to be a pet boarding facility, back in the zoning regulations, it was just considered a home occupation. There has always been hours of operation attached to that. Basically, I think most of it is to control when people do show up on the property, dropping off their pets, but also
It's not us requiring it. It's kind of their preferred hours or?
Yes, correct.
Second question was this, we've been issuing conditional use permits for this since 2009, or when did this start as a boarding house?
Gosh, it's been a while.
A long time
I
ago?
want to say around 2004 was when it first was a pet boarding facility. And as I've mentioned before, it was back then with the Sweetwater County zoning regulations, it was done under a home occupation permit. Obviously, we've made a few changes and now it's a
changes.
conditional
And
use
then
permit.
back to changes, didn't we do a lot of talking? I can't remember back whether we did, but after a conditional use permit was it, I think it was conditional use permit, Eric might remember, that we can extend them out so they don't have to come back so often. Then do we have time limits? Did we set that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commission Member Richards. So the book says 2 years, but since this has been in operation, discretionary speaking, you could extend that if you'd like. I believe Megan is wanting to extend that indefinitely unless there is so what happened was there was not a process for when complaints used to come up in the past. Now there is. So if things got crazy and out of hand, you could always, staff could bring them back before the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of County Commissioners, to look at the permit again. So since that safeguard is in there, we're comfortable with making it indefinite.
Indefinitely. Oh, okay, that's well, that's
Great
all my
question.
questions.
Thank you. Good question. Does anybody else have any comments, questions?
Well, I think her neighbor, Angie Martinez, is neighbor and she has no complaints. I mean, that's a good indicator right there that I'm great with it. I have no issues with this.
All right, would anybody like to make a motion with the recommendations from the land use office plus making
The
it
indefinite.
Yes, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve this conditional use permit with the staff's recommendations and make it an indefinite. You know, if there's a problem, then we can revisit it. But as long as it's running smooth, it's not make her keep coming back.
I'll second that.
Any final discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
I
All those opposed, motion carries. Perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm not sure if we've got any other additional business. Megan, Eric, anything?
Yes, Madam Chair. So the only thing is, so next month we'll have some language amendments before you that I'm proposing. One of them is to follow up with that setback issue that we had. And I promised that we would go back into the commercial zone district and reduce that down to 10 feet. So
Okay.
that's one of the amendments. There's also some changes to the agricultural exemption in regards to subdivisions. So I made a few changes there. And also on major site plan, trying to reduce those requirements to kind of streamline things along. There are certain situations where we don't need a major site plan. So I went in there and made some changes. Mr. Richards has brought up over the past some issues that we've had in our zoning resolution when that nursery came up. I am looking at that. I was trying to get it into this batch of zone map amendments, but I couldn't get it in time. It needs a little bit more research, but there's some things we could look at to make the zoning code a little bit more flexible when it comes, even in a situation like this today. So hopefully we can do that and make it a little bit more easy. They have things called parallel conditional use permits, what they do at the City of Rock Springs. And they also do conditional zone changes or conditional zoning overlays. So some things to look at. And actually, there's nowhere else in Wyoming that they have conditional zoning overlays. So it'd be something of a first here in Wyoming. So I'll bring that before you probably sometime this fall. And then we can take a look at it, look at the pros and cons. Maybe it's not a good idea, but at least it's something I think we should look at moving forward. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Perfect. And then what Stephanie had sent out about the Shishi Jam overlay, is that something we'll be looking for or, okay.
Yep, that'll be another permit application, I believe. I believe that's the only other one, correct?
Yeah, it would just be
September.
those two public
Okay.
hearings.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hearing nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. We had a short meeting today. It is 10:30 a.m. Thank you, everybody. And I